Well, the University of Sussex has been researching whether accessing emails out of hours could be harmful to some employees. Harmful how? What is the definition of harm? We never quite know, do we? If you've got experience of this, get in touch. 08000 288 291 or email Vine at bbc.co.uk. Maybe you got an email at 10 o'clock last night, 10:15 when you're up doing whatever you're doing, watching the news perhaps, and you thought, you know what, I don't need this. Maybe you're the kind of boss who sent an email at that time and you're rather regretting it. Or maybe you're the kind of boss who thinks that it's just par for the course. I'd love to hear from you. 08000 288 291 or email Vine at bbc.co.uk. We're doing the subject partly because I am a raging hypocrite, as will become revealed in the next few minutes. Lucy Barkus is a leadership and team development consultant in Worcester studio, and I think it's fair to say she thinks such emails are okay. And Mal Fletcher is a social commentator and futurist who joins us from Oxford, who's rather more sceptical. I think that's fair to say as well. Good afternoon to you both.
Hello.
Hello. There's a sort of knowing hello in that, Lucy, almost like you know you're setting yourself up for a bit of a ding-dong. What's your take on what these things are fair enough and fair game in the digital age?
Well, my point of view is that actually it's down to flexibility and down to the person. So if it's ever forced and expected by management, then that's probably not cool. But if it means that I can be flexible, I can pick and choose my own hours, it means I can get a good night's rest because I'm not thinking about it, then who am I to judge?
Yeah, but isn't there something horrible about always being on call? I mean, there was an age, believe it or not, before iPhones, before emails, when people actually couldn't be contacted when they got home, and actually it was blissful because they would talk to their families or eat a vindaloo, whatever it is you might do of an evening. I mean, isn't there something slightly tyrannical about the fact that we're always available these days?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's lovely to look back with rose-tinted glasses. But
I often do.
I know, me too. But the reality is we don't live in that world anymore. And if you're not responding to emails, you're probably looking on Facebook or LinkedIn or something or another. The point is, if you're that way inclined that you've got an always-on kind of attitude, then creating a policy that is going to stop you from behaving the way that you prefer to behave is just wrong.
But shouldn't you be so good at managing your time that you can get stuff done before you leave the office? Isn't that a sign of a really productive, efficient worker that they don't bring it home?
Well, there's two sides to that. If I was a manager who had members of staff working all hours God sends, logging on at ridiculous times, then I would be having that conversation to say, is everything okay? Are you managing things? Am I overloading you? But on the other hand, we are working in a more flexible, agile, global world where some of our colleagues might be in Australia, they might be in Dubai. So really, the traditional 9 till 5 is kind of that rose-tinted world, and we've got to try and stay ahead, move in the global markets if we're going to stay competitive.
There you are, Mal Fletcher. You're just hostage to a nostalgic view of the world, sepia-tinged, where you think when bygones were bygones, you could actually leave work at work. But these days, you've got to be connected all the time.
Well, good afternoon. Look, I'm a bit like Lucy. I mean, I'm my own boss. However, most people don't own their own businesses. They're not entirely free to establish their own rules and priorities about work-related emails. And if they're not given at least a policy of cues from the leadership of the company, the dominant culture around them says you should get into digital overload. 60% of Brits today who own a smartphone say they check their emails immediately before going to sleep and just after waking up. 65% of British CEOs feel pressure to work weekends because of email overload. So our brains need downtime. If we don't get that, we set ourselves up for higher levels of cognitive dysfunction, lower levels of productivity. And get this, one US study said recently that digital engagement alone, primarily through emails, is costing US businesses at least $31 billion per year in lost productivity.
But don't we need some flexibility on this, Mal? I mean, isn't it really about, I guess, the job that you do, the relationship you have with the boss, the particular needs of the company, and also the time in your life? I mean, there was a time in the distant past when, and this is where my hypocrisy comes in, where I was a boss and I would send and receive emails up to 2 in the morning. Nowadays, I've got 2 kids and I actually really want to be left alone when I'm not on call. And that's not always something you can do, especially when you work in the news industry. So we've got to be flexible about this, don't we?
Yes, we do. I'm not advocating a French-style approach. You know, the French in 2017 enshrined a law, which they loosely called the right to disconnect. But they recognise...
That's a gloriously French way of doing
French way of saying things. But the thing with that was, at least it recognised 2 things. It recognised that flexi time and paid vacation time were hard-won workplace rights, which might now effectively be wound back over time by digital engagement, especially by unscrupulous employers. And secondly, it recognises that an over-engagement with digital, of which email is a major part, does lead to higher levels of distraction. In a London company recently, let me just share this quickly, a study showed that on average, if you seat a worker behind their desk, turn on their email account, on average it takes 11 minutes for them to be distracted by emails, and on average 30 minutes to get back to what they should have been doing. There's a 40% chance they'll never get back to what they should have been doing.
Well, but let me ask you that, to address that directly, Lucy. So, the point that Mal makes is that actually it's bad for productivity to not have this downtime, that actually if your brain is refreshed, if you get a decent night's sleep, if you're not looking at emails the whole time, you're going to be a better worker when you are in the office.
Yeah, but we've got to understand that every individual is different. So for some people, having work-life integration where they can actually have downtime during the day, go to the gym, go for a walk at lunch, if that means trading some time in the evening, is absolutely fine. Others prefer a much more structured day where they are doing the traditional 9 to 5 and then they put their phones away at the end of the day. And I think that's where we're missing a trick. We need to start having conversations and maybe ditching the email altogether and actually have one-to-one conversations with our people and say, how do you prefer to work? And I will respect that.
But isn't this a thing, Lucy? Isn't there something about smartphones and emails which, they come about very quickly in the last 25, 30 years, and they're a sort of species-level environmental shock? If an alien came down now and he or she looked at us, they'd say, why are you guys glued to these screens? And the phrase I've got for it is we're all slave to the algorithm. We're all completely and utterly besotted with our phones. Isn't there something terrible about the fact that we are subdued and we are so dependent on electronic technology to the detriment of the rest of our lives?
Yeah, in many degrees, it's absolutely terrifying. I've got a teenage daughter, so I can see it, just for myself. It's like an extension to her. And yeah, in many ways, it absolutely terrifies me. But on the other hand, she's so much more aware of global issues. She's connected with her friends. She's socialising. So for every negative, there's a really positive side to it. And yeah, if it means that, for her, we're training her already to be always on because she's got homework. The teachers are setting her coursework to do over half term. So actually, we're already training our children from probably year one to start doing stuff outside of core hours.
Indeed. Mal, you mentioned the French experience. They have a different way of doing things in France, a slightly different approach to the working week. A lot of people would say they have an admirable approach to the working week where they actually say that there are more important things in life than economic productivity. Is this a kind of straightforward conflict between different competing goods in our lives? On the one hand, it's family time, downtime, brain space, sleep. On the other hand, it's, economic efficiency and proficiency where we can respond to workers, so workers can respond to bosses and be part of companies that are generating strong profits.
Yes, there is a conflict there sometimes, I get it. And as I say, I'm not against flexi time, but I'm just saying that not everybody has that advantage. And there's some evidence too that the way we use email is actually changing as a result of social media. So younger workers in particular are starting to use email in the way that we once used Twitter. So instead of one email having a stream of or a range of points, we've got a whole long line of emails, each dealing with just one point, which is more conversational, but it presents the challenge there of even more crowded inboxes and greater opportunity for clutter. So to avoid that, I think we need to develop within companies clear guidelines and skill sets to help people avoid what I call technological pragmatism, where we simply do things because the tech makes them possible.
Indeed. All right, final question to you, Lucy, if I may. I've just come back from paternity leave and I put a pretty aggressive out-of-office message on which just said, hello, full stop, I am on extended paternity leave, full stop. Do you think that the people who emailed me twice when they got the out of office but then emailed again or maybe sent me a text, what was the right thing for me to say to them? Because I was thinking about saying something pretty rude.
To be honest, I would just ignore them. You're out of office. And the responsibility lies with the receiver. It's up to you whether you read it or not.
Exactly. The other thing is to pretend to be on eternal honeymoon where people leave you alone. Lucy Barkus and Mal Fletcher, thank you very much indeed. You both make a bunch of very persuasive points. What do you guys think? Give us a call, 08000 288 291. I'd love to know if you are that boss, if you're feeling guilty because he sent that message last night and you just know you shouldn't have done it.